Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in the southeast corner of Scotland. And everybody knows that Scotland is the capital of everything. It is. It really is. It's an old joke. It's getting old now, but it's still fun to do it nonetheless. And today it is September 1st. Can you believe we are at September 1st already in 2024? It seems like hardly yesterday that we were doing the New Year's, the Hopmanay show. And yet here we are on September 1st. It's mental that this is the point in the year that we've got to. Already the sun is going down earlier, actually quite noticeably earlier. Here in Scotland, so the nights are starting to draw in, and the sun comes up later and later in the morning. So yeah, it's starting to get to that point in the year where I guess for some people, certainly they will start to feel the effects of seasonal what do they call it? SADS, or there's some kind of seasonal disorder where basically because the nights are getting longer and the days are getting shorter, people are not getting enough sunlight, and so there is this thing for some people where that leads them to becoming quite depressed and that kind of thing, because they're not getting enough vitamin D and that kind of thing. So I know that there are some people who are affected by that seasonal disorder. Personally, I'm not, although I probably could do with getting out a lot more, for sure, than I actually do. So anyway, we are kind of heading in towards that season. I believe, was it yesterday or the day before, was the meteorological beginning of fall, or autumn, as we call it here in the UK. So that it's starting to get a wee bit on the dark side here now. So anyways, welcome one and all. Ron Figura was the first one in. Well done to you, Ron. Congratulations. He says, I'm up too early. Yeah, you are up too early, my friend. For sure. Followed by Sean Aaron and Billy Morgan. Chris Mrackner is here. He says, what a great day to be alive and with good company. Hello to you all, including Billy and Ron and Sean. Yes, that's a really good attitude to start the day with, for sure. And to start this show off, for definite. It is a great day to be alive. And I do have awesome company. I have your company, which is the best company on the internet. So I will gladly take that. So thank you for that reminder, Chris. Excellent reminder. Jay Feliciano is here as well. And Chris has the first question of the night, which is all about the video track and the use thereof. And we will get to that because it's a really good question. And the video track is actually very, very cool. And the things it can now do, because it has been updated since it was first introduced. So some of the things it can do now are pretty spectacular, pretty awesome. Although the thing to bear in mind is that Studio One is still a DAW and not really a video editing program. But there are things it can certainly do, which is pretty cool. So well worth taking a wee look at, which we will do. Excuse me. John Hawk is here. Stephen Wilson is here. Rock Tease is here. Who says, greetings to the absolute singularity of the cosmos and beyond into the far reaches of the unknown from New Zealand. I think that's yes. I thank you for that greeting. I'll take that. And Kyle is reminding everybody that Billy's Studio One meetup, the New Orleans meetup is, I think it's New Orleans. Be wrong about that. But yes, his meetup is right after tonight's show. So when we finish here, head straight over to the Zoom link that he has provided. The password is S1 Meetup. If you are a Studio One user, get yourself over there and come and join us. And Billy will be hosting it. And you will be able to continue to discuss Studio One and talk about maybe some of the things that we've talked about tonight. We've already got 20 people in here, which is freaking awesome. So thank you, everybody, for coming. I appreciate it. W5 family are here. Don Oliver is here. Danny Taylor is here. Kyle, as I said, is here. Lucas Rusitska, the wizard of the Harmony Wizard, is here. Congratulations on your release, Lucas. And it was an absolute honor and delight to review your product on Wednesday's show. And I hope that pretty much every single person that is in the chat just now will go and purchase it because it's freaking brilliant. What a tool. Absolutely. For sure. And we've got Rich Cresswell here as well. And we've got Bobby Booth and RJ Hagler, who deleted his message. I didn't know why, but he did. Anyway. And Mark, my friend Mark, down in Birmingham, Old School Funk and Soul is here as well. But he says he's only here briefly, but I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you checked in, which is awesome. All right, so let's get to Chris's question. Now, before we get to getting to it, first thing I should say, if you want to ask a question, the first thing you need to do is you need to subscribe to my channel because the chat is subscriber only mode. The reason being is, I forgot John Hathwaite is also here. The reason that we set it to subscriber only mode is because for a wee while we had people coming into the show and into the chat and posting links to, not links because you have to be a moderator or the channel host to post a link, but they were basically posting stuff about dodgy stuff and porn and stuff like that. So we got rid of them. And I set the whole thing to subscriber only. So you gotta be a subscriber. But if you are a subscriber and you abuse it and you start posting shit like what I just talked about, and I used the word shit deliberately, you will be banned from the channel. My moderators will put you on timeout and then I will personally deliver the ban hammer. So please don't do it. All right. With all that negativity out the way, once you've subscribed and you want to ask a question, please start by typing at Jonny Lipsham Studios to start with. Because what that does is that highlights my name in red and I know it's a question and not just genuine, general conversation between everybody here. So I would appreciate it if you do that so that I can differentiate between questions and general conversation. That would help me out a lot. All right, so my moderators are here. I've got quite a good number of moderators, which is cool. So those guys can post links, as Billy has done, to the StudioOneToolbox.com/Harmony Wizard link, which takes you direct to the Harmony Wizard product, which is freaking awesome. It was so much fun reviewing that with Rich on Wednesday. And I have been playing with it actually quite a bit since then. And even for me, who, has music degrees, multiple music degrees, and, I'm a musicologist, I find it insanely useful. So if I do, the rest of you should do as well. So anyway, let's go up to Chris's question because it is a good one. And he says, I have been working with the video track extensively today. I finally went back to using Camtasia. I use Camtasia as well, and I'm going to get to talking about Camtasia in just a wee minute as well. I would like some pointers on how everyone else is using it. I find it a little bit cumbersome. I know it's me and my inexperience with it. How do you edit videos on the fly? It is really good at aligning things, but I can't figure out how to record audio while the video is playing. Once you have a video track engaged, how do you insert an audio track? Okay, I'm going to treat all of that as one question because it is a good question. So let me get this song open because I created one to start with, and seeing as we're kind of heading in towards winter, I pulled up a winter orientated video to go with it. So just give me one little second, and we'll go over to the screen here, and we'll put my camera on at the top there. All right, so snowy scene. I shot this about 3 years ago, December 2021. And I'll just give you a wee bit of a background to this video. Basically, 5 minutes, I kid you not, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes before I started shooting this video, there was no snow on the ground. And this video is only like a few minutes long. I think it's only like 2 minutes long. But loads of snow was coming down. It was coming down very, very heavily. So I thought, wow, an accumulation of snow that quickly, that's impressive. As you can see over here, these are all the kits for all the houses that are going to be built down here. And those houses are all now built and people live in them now, which is amazing, considering that was only like 3 years ago. So there is no audio on this. Well, there is, but it's kind of very, very quiet and it's really not worth listening to. So we will, for this, ignore the audio. And I'm just going to play what we have here so you can see this video in action. And you can see it was pretty heavy snowfall. And this is actually the street that I live on, by the way. And all of these are new, brand new houses. Certainly in 2021, they were pretty much brand new. And that's pretty much it. So what I'm going to do is I've created this piano track here, which is for this guy over here. And I'm going to record something, not on Fender Rhodes. I'll put the Steinway Concert Grand on. And I'm going to record something that I think kind of may or may not go with the image that we're seeing here, the video that we're seeing here. Because I could do Pastiche Christmas Song. Not going to do that because that's far too cheesy. Although highly tempting to play some kind of bitonal version of Jingle Bells. But I'm not going to do that because it's way too early for Christmas songs, and I have rules about Christmas songs, even if we're hinting at them. I'd rather do kind of Halloweeny kind of stuff first, before we get onto that. All right, so that sounds like somebody going into a bathroom next door. Okay, let's just play some random chords to go with this video, and I'm gonna get my metronome on and get my pre-count on. Turn that down a little bit. Don't it too terribly loud. Okay, let's hit record and see. And I'm just going to see what comes out under my fingers, because this is part of the question is: can I record whilst the video is playing? Yes, you can. Watch this. There we go. All right, so let's turn the darn click off because that's like the most irritating thing on the planet ever. But there we go. So as you can see, it was pretty easy. You're playing a soft synth. How do you play an external keyboard? No, I'm not playing a soft synth. This is my actual Nord recorded audio. It's not a soft synth. As you can see here, see that there? That is an audio track icon. If I was recording something like Presence, the procedure would be exactly the same. Or let's say I want to put some lead architect on with this as well. And we'll find some kind of pad kind of thingy, maybe something like this. Let's see what this is going to be like. You know, we could just kind of layer something up here just for pure entertainment value. Don't know why I clicked on that. Or some other nonsense like that. None of that made any sense. I totally balls that up, which is why I kind of ended where I did, really. So let's delete that. Truth is, I actually couldn't really hear what I was playing. Let's see. I punched the mic yet again. Hang on. Probably doesn't help that the piano is really, really quiet. Let's give that a little bit of volume. Okay, that might be better. All right, let's go back to the lead architect again. Or some other complete and utter tosh. Because that really is complete and utter bilge and filth and does not really reflect what's going on the screen. But anyway, that's kind of by the by. The point is, yes, you can totally record. Now, you just record like you would record into any other song. It's just as simple as that. If your keyboard is not showing up, you need to first of all create an audio track. If it's external, if it's an external instrument, then just add it as an external instrument. I don't have any external instruments, so I can't really do that. As you can see, I don't have any. But if you have your external hardware synthesizer set up as an external instrument, then it should be listed here as an external instrument. And if it is, you can just drag and drop that in and it creates an audio track and everything that you need to be able to play that instrument, just like it would for any other song. So it's just setting up an audio track. That's all it is. There's nothing more complicated than that, really, to be honest. You just treat it like any other song. The only difference is you have a video in the video track. You know, kind of that's really all there is to it, is that, you know. You just treat it like any other audio track. And then when you render this, so if I was to just play this, I'm sure I could come up with something much better on that lead architect thing. And maybe find a much happier sounding sound. That's kind of dark. That might do it. Something like that might be a little bit better. Now that you've got me kind of recording on this. There. Let's take that off. So I could, in fact, just duplicate this. I mean, it's a little bit different at the end, but that's okay. All right, so there. That gives you an idea of what you can do with video. Yes, you can do kind of editing on this as well. You can do some cuts, you can do some copies, paste, you can move different parts of the video around. So you can do some very, very bare bones basic editing on the video track itself with all of this kind of going on to picture. Now, if you then decide that you're happy with what you have, and you want to export this, pretty easy. You go to song and you go to export video, and then you set your destination and the file name and the source type. And then I recommend that you just keep it set to video. Now you could do between loop or between song markers or between selected markers. But I would recommend you keep it on video. And what this does is this exports the entire length of the video. And then if you wanted to basically just trim it down a little bit or add some, crossfades or, a title screen, an end title screen, stuff like that that you cannot do in Studio One, then I would recommend you use something like Camtasia, which is what I use for video editing. All of the videos that you've ever seen me post on my channel have been shot using OBS and then edited using Camtasia. Back in the day, I used to, way back in the day, maybe 10 years ago, I actually used to use Camtasia's screen recorder to basically record my screen. And I did everything, making the video, editing the video, the whole works. I did everything inside of Camtasia. I don't do that anymore. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, back then the screen recorder was okay, but it wasn't actually that good. And so when I got the result of the screen capture into the editing section of Camtasia, the problem I had was the screen recording was like a little bit pixelated. And there was some digital artifacting and things going on in the picture. And so I didn't like that because it meant that my videos were of a much lower quality than I wanted. And so I stopped using that and I started using OBS for recording the videos. And this is before I started using OBS for doing the show like I am now. Because those of you that have been following me for a long time will know that I have had my studio in 3 different places over the last 12 years or so. And in the first place I had, the little box room that I was in, the internet was terrible. Really, really terrible. I had less than 1 gigabit per second. Sorry, not gigabit. Less than 1 megabit per second. So not even 1 meg per second of upload speed. It was about 600 kilobits a second. It was terrible. Not fast enough for streaming. So I had to use something on Google that they had, which they don't have anymore, called Hangouts. Hangouts on Air, I think it was called. And so that's how I did my early shows. I used Hangouts. That kind of worked. Because that was the encoder. It wasn't really eating up my entire bandwidth just to encode it, which is what OBS was doing. So that kind of worked for a while. And sometimes it would freeze, sometimes it would pixelate, and sometimes the audio would collapse to mono for no reason because all the bandwidth was wonky. But we got through it, and some of you have been watching my show since then, like Billy Morgan and Bobby Booth and people like that. You guys have been watching my show through that whole period. And then I moved into studio number 2, and the internet was like 100 times faster. And I've been using OBS to do this show ever since then. So, that was like 2018. So, for like the last 6-7 years or so, we've been doing the show that way. And it really, really works. So I only use Camtasia to edit my videos because I can do things like I can do crossfades between sections of a video. So like when I do, for example, I'm giving you some behind the scenes things here, but when I do my videos about a new version of Studio One, for example, I don't do that in one long shot. I don't do that in one long video. I break that up into sections. So I'll do maybe a couple of features at a time, and I will record them as a short little 4 or 5 minute video covering those 2 features. And I'll do like 10 or 15 of those, and then I'll edit them together into one long video. And I'll crossfade between the different videos and that kind of thing. And of course I can do title screens, I can do zooms, I can do highlights. I can highlight particular things if I really want to spend the time editing those kind of things into the video. I can do all of that stuff in Camtasia. Camtasia is very, very powerful for that. I'm not using the current release of Camtasia. I am using a very old version of Camtasia, Camtasia 2018. It just works. It works for me. I don't think it will work on Windows 11, so when I go up to Windows 11, I'll have to find probably another video editor or splash out the cache and get the latest version of Camtasia, which, by the way, I think has gone, unless I'm very much mistaken, has gone subscription, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending upon your outlook on life and how much you use the product. If you use Camtasia a lot and you do a lot of video editing, then a subscription is probably a great idea. But for me, I'm not editing videos every single day. So even if I'm shooting videos every single day, I'm not editing them every single day. So it makes no sense for me to get the subscription, to be honest. It's probably not financially worth it, but I don't think they do a perpetual license. So I'll have to maybe think about something else that I might be able to use, like maybe DaVinci Resolve, because I know that that's free as far as I'm aware. It's still free, I think. That might work. But yeah, so that's the video track in Studio One. And by the way, when we added the video track to Studio One, I did a specific video on that. So if you want to find that, then when you are on my channel after the show, then please, click on the little search magnifier thing, and in that search box, just type in video track and you'll see that video pop up, and you can watch that. It's not very long. It's only a few minutes. It's only about 4 or 5 minutes long, I think. But it works pretty good. So yeah, so that is that. I'm looking to see if we have any other questions, but that has been a great question to get us started with. Chris, thank you for that one. Good one. Good question. Let's see. I'm looking for questions. Yeah. Lucas says, me and Rich did such a great job showcasing Harmony Wizard on Wednesday. It was really, really great fun. It really was. And Rich kind of did the lion's share of the work there. I didn't do nearly as much as he did. He did most of the demo work because of the two of us, he's probably the most familiar with it. I'm not saying I'm not familiar with it, but he's probably the most familiar with it of the two of us. So I figured it was a good idea that he basically took the lead on demoing it. So thanks very much. Big thanks to Rich Cresswell for joining me on the show and helping me out with demoing Harmony Wizard. It was great fun. Chris says he has it figured out. So awesome. So Chris now has his keyboard in his song for his video, which is great. So I'm glad to hear that that is now working for you. Let's see. Snowy but not Christmassy. Yes. Yeah, I was kind of going for that kind of snowy kind of vibe. And I just totally made those chords up off the top of my head, basically. I just played something I kind of thought sounded nice. And actually, some of those pad sounds in Lead Architect sound really, really good. I really like them. And yeah, I like to make use of those. And I have actually on a couple of other songs that I have made recently, like my the last year for last year's Halloween challenge, I did this piece which was all about a volcanic eruption called Soufrière, which is named after the larger of the volcanoes on the island of Montserrat. And that erupted relatively recently. I think it erupted maybe a couple of years ago, quite violently. And pretty much everybody on the island was evacuated off the island again. And so that was what that piece of music was about. It was all about the kind of the prelude to and then the eruption itself. And I used Mai Tai a lot, and I used Lead Architect quite a bit, and I used some of the Persona Symphonic Orchestra, and I used some choir sounds from Impulse Record that I've got, and I blended all of those two together, and it worked really, really well. And of course, it was never going to win because it's my contest, and I cannot win my own contest, which is probably a good thing, because cheating is a thing, and I don't like cheating or taking advantage, so I'm not going to do that. Let's see. Anyway, Lucas says he likes the atmosphere. Yeah, that's cool. Thank you for that, buddy. I appreciate that. Chris says, help me to figure out why I need the project page. Show me why I need to use it. The project page is extremely useful. And again, I believe I have done a video on the project page. The project page is awesome. And it's awesome for a bunch of reasons. Firstly, if you are mastering an album and you have done all of the songs for the album in Studio One, and I have done complete productions for clients before, where we've done everything. We've done the songwriting, we've done the recording, and we've done the mixing, and we've done the mastering, all in Studio One. From end to end, the whole thing was done in Studio One. And so the project page was perfect for that, because basically what the project page does is it's not just any old mastering suite. It is unique in that it has a linked relationship between the song and the project. So when you send to the project page from the song page, it creates a link between the song and the project. So let's say you have 8, 9, 10 songs that you have done for an album in Studio One. and you send those to the same project page. So you've got all 10 songs in your project page. Now you can do the mastering for that project, which means you can do EQ and compression and limiting and, volume leveling, so that all the songs, when you play them back at the end, when you do your complete release, all the songs are at the same level. So the end user who buys your album doesn't have to keep on turning it up for one song, turning it down for the next song. Or one song has a lot of mid-range in it, and the next song has none. Or the next song after that has a load of bass in it that the other ones don't have. So you can kind of eliminate those kind of differentials between each song, so that not only do they sound cohesive together as a whole, and so the whole album itself has its own sound, but each song within that has its own cohesive sound, and doesn't sound out of place with all the other ones, so that you're not constantly reaching for either a volume control or on your playback system or an EQ on your playback system. So, if you're listening in your car, for example, you're listening to your album in the car, and you're listening on those on the speakers, most car stereos have an EQ built into them, right? So you can adjust the mids, you can adjust the lows, you can adjust the highs. And so when you're driving along listening to your album, the last thing you want to be doing, because you're driving, is reaching for controls to adjust either the volume or the EQ so that the songs sound correct. And this is what mastering does. I'm kind of like scratching the surface of what mastering is, but this is kind of one of the functions of mastering, is that it enables your whole project to have its own cohesive sound, and also that it is at what they would call, quote unquote, the commercial volume level. So that if for example, your album gets picked up by a radio station or something, when they play the song of another artist before yours, and then they play yours, your song is at the same volume level as theirs. And you're not losing any dynamic range, because here's the thing: radio stations, streaming services, they all have their own limiters built into them. The reason they have those is because there are loudness normalization standards. Broadcast organizations like radio stations have theirs, streaming services have theirs. And so one of the things you need to be aware of what those values are. Not that you're aiming to hit those as a target exactly, but you're aiming to make sure that the music is going to sound at the right volume without sacrificing dynamic range. Because the last thing you want is your song to be too loud for the broadcaster, and what they do is they turn it down. And they turn it down by using a limiter. What's that going to do? That's going to squash your dynamic range of your song. And that might actually destroy what your song sounds like. It will end up just sounding over-compressed, which is not what you want. So it's important that you kind of adhere to those loudness standards for that reason, so that your music isn't really going to get turned down. It might get turned down like maybe a dB or two. That's okay. A couple of dBs being turned down by a radio station is not it's not a big deal, providing, you're within you've got plenty of headroom to play with. Then it's not going to affect the dynamic range too terribly much. And so those kind of things are important. If, on the other hand, you are only releasing single songs, like all you do is like you just upload a single song to SoundCloud or somewhere like that, then you probably don't really need the project page, because you can do all of that using the master fader in the song page. You can do the EQ, the compression, and the limiting, and you can do the exporting, and you can adhere to those loudness normalization standards in the export dialog. So if you're just uploading a single song, you don't need the project page. The project page is really for albums, EPs, or collections of songs. Whatever those might actually be. So if you are just putting out a single song or a single piece of music, then yes, you don't really need the project page. Project page is kind of probably a little bit much for you. However, if you decide, Chris, that you've put out 5 or 6 songs over, I don't know, a couple of years maybe, and maybe you decide, why don't I just collate those 5, 6, 7, 8 songs together in a collection and put those out as an album? Well, that's where the project page would come in handy, albeit because if you've done those songs all in Studio One, then all you need to do is just send them to the same project, and then you can work on them that way. And then you can upload your collection to SoundCloud as an album. I've done that. I've done that with at least one of my albums, which is up on SoundCloud. So those are kind of the reasons for the existence of the project page. Studio One is unique in that it has a completely integrated mastering suite in the project page. And it gives you loads of loudness and balance information so that you can make sure that your masters are, really good and, will help you. There's information there, like the loudness units levels, so that you can make sure that you are going to be within those normalization standards I referred to earlier. If kind of that kind of thing is all kind of a little bit over your head, that's okay. We have folks in this community who do mastering. That's what they do. Darren is one of those. Darren Smith, my good friend Smudge, he is one of those. He's a professional mastering engineer, and that's all he does, mastering. I mean, he does other things too, but that's his primary focus. Brandon, my good friend Brandon Alshouse, who he's not really around in the community, the Studio One community much these days, because frankly, the guy is way too busy. His career has gone off like a rocket. He's up in the stratosphere now, which is really, really great for him. I'm really pleased for him, because he has received, I believe he's received a Grammy nomination for one of his masters that he did for one of his clients. I don't know whether he won, but I'm pretty sure he actually got a nomination, and that's a big thing to get nominated for a Grammy for one of your masters. That's pretty awesome. So Brandon, his mastering company is called Steelhouse Mastering, I believe is what it's called. I think I've got that right. And then there's Darren. I forget what his company is called. I've totally forgotten what his company is called, but he is really, really good, and I can totally recommend them, and I could probably put you in touch with either of those guys, Chris, and then you can kind of take it from there with them. But yeah, so that's the project page. Project page is pretty awesome. And like I said, Studio One is unique in that it has a completely built-in mastering tool directly built inside the DAW. And the cool thing is, if as you are mastering using the project page, you're working on a song, and as you start adding some EQ, a little bit of compression, a little bit of limiting, you start thinking to yourself, you know what? That rhythm guitar on the left there is just a hair too loud. But the backing vocal, the middle backing vocal that's on the right here is just a little bit too quiet. It's not in balance with the other backing vocals. Good news is, if you've done the mix in Studio One, you can change it. You can go back and you can make that adjustment, and then you can send the updated mastering file straight to the project page, and you can continue where you left off. And that for me was one of the big selling points for me for coming over to Studio One from Cubase, Progressive Sound Studio. Thank you. Thank you, Rich Cresswell. The old memory is starting to kind of just, flake a little bit around the edges as I'm getting older, unfortunately. But yes, Darren is Progressive Sound Audio. So I highly recommend either Brandon Allshouse or Darren's companies for mastering. You will get incredible results from those two guys. I can guarantee it. No question about it. No question about it. I thoroughly endorse those two guys' work as mastering engineers. Another guy you could also contact is Ian Shepherd. He's a bit more of a high-profile mastering engineer, but he's great. He's a friend of mine as well. So I know 3 really, really outstanding mastering engineers. Ian has a wealth of experience. He also has a website and YouTube channel. His website is Production Advice. I think it is productionadvice.co.uk. Yeah, he does talk about mixing and mastering. He does talk about mixing, rather. But his main thing is mastering. He's a mastering engineer. And he is also the founder of Dynamic Range Day, which is basically kind of like a thing that he devised whereby, people could have, people could get to know about the importance of dynamic range, and, everything shouldn't just be like a squished, flipping sausage of a master. You don't want that. And so he's been very much an advocate for ending the loudness wars and getting people into, looking after and maintaining dynamic range in our music. So he's another great guy that you could check out for sure. So if you're looking for mastering services, those are the 3 I recommend. Yeah, productionadvice.co.uk. Yeah, that's one I did remember correctly. Thank you again, Rich, for helping me out with those. I appreciate it. Dwayne says, I don't use everything in my Swiss Army knife every time I use it. You should use it even if you don't have more than one song. Using it regularly helps keep your workflow tidy. It is very useful. I kind of agree with that. I don't completely agree. I think if you are just putting out singles, I don't think you necessarily need to use the project page to do that. There is, I'm trying to form my sentence in my head and it's not working. There are tools available in the song page that you can use for mastering, which I can kind of show you some of those just now, actually. That's not a big deal to kind of go through. We should kind of go through some of these. So let's go back over here and we could look at what we have available that we can put on the inserts here for mastering. So you can certainly use just a regular compressor and you could use a regular limiter for sure. But there's also this guy here, the level meter, which is very, very cool because you have the peak RMS. You also have this here, EBU R128. This is what is used for broadcasters, and this gives you the loudness range and it gives you your LUFS as well. These are values that are important to make sure that your music is going to be good for what we talked about earlier about those loudness normalization standards. And so as you can see up here, it says short-term and momentary. So that's kind of what these all are. And then if I set this into LUFS mode here, then you can see that the range immediately changes versus LU mode. So if I go back here and then I kind of, it's not going to show me. And then you've also got the K metering system as well, which is also very useful. I use these quite a bit, but they do take getting your head around a little bit. and I have already done a video on the K system before, which actually might be a little bit outdated because it was done maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. So it might be worth me revisiting the K system, which is called the K system because it was devised by Bob Katz. So it's named after him, K for Katz. And it basically just gives you different metering values, and the 12, 14, and 20 are to do with headroom. So if I put this into K20, what you'll see here is you'll see this 0 dB, and then you'll see this 20 value at the top. Now, this here is not the same as 0 dB peak. But this gives you like 20 dB of headroom. And if I go down here, now you'll notice that the 0 is moved up, and we've now got 14 up at the top here. And then if I go down again, now we see that the 0 has moved up again, and now we only have 12. And basically the idea was behind the system, basically, in very, 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 very generic basic terms, is that 0 dB is kind of where you want to be at, but you also have like 12 dB of headroom. So these all give you different amounts of headroom available to you. And so it just helps you basically, A, to avoid clipping for a start, and B, it's also color coded. So when we play this track, we can see that it's in the green here, but if it goes over 0, see, it goes yellow. But if we keep going, it would go up into the red up here. Now, in this case, red is okay. If you're using the K system, red is okay. It's color-coded, but it doesn't mean it's clipping. Whereas if you have this in peak RMS mode, if it goes over 0 dB here, and you can see the 0 is way at the top here, and you only have 6 dB of headroom here. But if the audio goes over 0 dB, you get into digital clipping when you're in peak RMS mode here. Because this is the peak level here. And if you go over that, that gets you into digital clipping. Whereas these give you a whole different system of metering altogether, where 0 is not clipping. It's not the peak level of the signal. I haven't necessarily explained that incredibly well here, but I do, like I said, I do have other videos that go into that in a bit more detail. So if I play this track again with this in LUFS mode, we can see our integrated value here, and we can see our loudness range here, and then we've got the true peak value here. So the numbers I'm mostly looking at here is the integrated, the loudness range, and the momentary value. Those are the values I'm looking at the most. And this is a whole nother subject that I could probably do an entire show on. So maybe I probably should. But yeah, so you can use this for mastering, and you can use an EQ and a compressor. You can just whack those on here, and then you can put a limiter in the post here, which is post fader, and this will catch any peaks that there might be when you start driving in a little bit of extra gain to get it up to that quote unquote commercial level that you'd be looking for. So I hope that that kind of helps. Like I said, I've not really covered that in incredible intensive detail, but I think I've done a reasonable job. Rich says, even though I don't use it, if you have a mastering chain that you'd like to use, you can create separation between two processes of mixing and mastering. Yes, absolutely. And, you know, that's the other advantage of this, is that even if you are not releasing an album, what having the song page and the project page does is it does mean that you switch into a different mindset when you're over in the project page, because you put the mastering hat on. Whereas if you're in the song page, you're in the, you know, the songwriting, recording, arranging, and mixing area. So you're wearing those hats when you're in that area. And then, you know, the project page provides you with a whole bunch of tools and a whole bunch of metering and things like that, which will help you kind of do the last kind of polish, if you like, the last wax and polish before, you know, your newly made vehicle goes off to the dealership, to use that as a metaphor. So I hope that helps. Really, really great questions once again. So, absolutely. All right, so we've got 1 minute left. Because those questions were really, really great and kind of took over kind of the vast majority of the show. However, I can tell you we peaked at 27, which is really, really good. That's not the highest level we have had for a Sunday Night Live. The highest level we have had for Sunday Night Live is 64. Albeit that was for the launch of Studio One 5. And then we had 50 something, I think, on the launch of Studio One 6. So who knows what the future will hold. But yeah, it would be nice if we could start getting over 30 people here regularly on a Sunday, and maybe over 20 on a Wednesday regularly. That would be fantastic. I would dearly love that. So that's the end of the show. And we've got the Studio One meetup immediately after this one. The password is S1 meetup, which is all lowercase. If you're a Studio One user, I think it would be a very good place for you to go and hang out with other Studio One users. And also you can get your questions answered in much the same way that we've done it here, except it's kind of a little bit more real time and you can actually talk, which is always a good thing. And so, yeah, it's all done on Zoom. Yeah, make yourself comfortable over there and enjoy the conversation and getting to know some other Studio One folks. That's the other big benefit. And of course, at these Studio One meetups, we talk about Studio One and we talk about things that we would like to see in the future for Studio One. You know, maybe dream about new features, what we would like to see in terms of features added to Studio One in the future, that kind of stuff. We can talk about all of those kind of things too over there. So head over there now. I will be over there in just a minute for a little while. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And I will see you on Wednesday for a very special episode of Songwriting Simplified, where Rich Cresswell will be joining me. And we will be talking all things scary and all things Halloween. So I will see you then, folks. Good night.